Up until now, we have been working all on the same layer, the scenery layer. If I expand the current layer, you will see that there are the options for new design layer and new sheet layer. We're not talking about sheet layers right now. That's how you're going to lay out your document to present it. You'll see that there's one here on my screen. That's because I presented a document to you on the last assignment that hopefully gave you a little bit more clarity on what you're expected to do. Everything above this gray line here is a sheet layer. And everything below this gray line is a design layer. So currently we've got light plot, scenery, seating, and theater architecture. The reason why I've created those as your 4 layers is because I think it's easier for you to understand why we might want layers. Think of this as the 3rd story of the building, this is the 2nd story of the building, 1st story of the building, and the ground floor of the building, depending on how you like to label your buildings. So this is the highest thing in the air. There may be times when you're creating a light plot that you don't accidentally want to place a light on the scenery. You want to make sure that it gets placed on the hanging position. You might start to find the seating to be distracting, so you might want to turn it off, and you might also want the theater architecture to be something you can't grab a hold of or accidentally change, because that happens a lot by accident if you are able to modify it. So by breaking these things into different layers, we can control what we can modify at what time, or see at what time. So there's the stackable layer organization button. I'm going to click on that. So currently everything is on scenery. So if I turn it off, it should go off, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it? Because currently scenery is the active layer. Okay, so things will not turn off if the active layer is currently engaged. So if I change this, you can see that the little icon has gone away to light plot. Now it all goes away. I am now going to go back to scenery as the active layer, and I'm going to make it visible again. Let's make things on different layers. So everything that is magenta, and don't forget to hold the shift button. Everything that is magenta is going to be changed to the light plot layer. And you can see how this was behind and then it popped forward because it's now above everything else. Now I'm going to click off of those things to deselect them, and I'm going to hold down the shift button on everything that is cyan. Alright, so now that I've selected those things, I am going to come over here and change them to seating. Note that I am changing things in the object info box. This is your most important box. This area only affects new objects. If you want to modify existing objects, you have to go to the object info box. If I were to go here and to change this to light plot or to seating, this object has stayed the same. It is still on the light plot no matter what this changes to. So now I have objects that are in seating. I have objects that are in scenery, and objects that are on the light plot. We could select the little triangle and call that theater architecture just for funsies. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you turn layers off or gray them. So if I go up here to layers, I'm going to go to light plot. My active layer is scenery. I'm going to turn off everything that's on light plot. See, all the magenta went away. Used to be here, now it's gone. So now I'm going to make that same layer gray. Now you can see the outlines of where those magenta things are, but not the actual color themselves. You can still click on them. It's still giving me a smart cursor intersection here, but it's not in its full color. this is really useful when you're doing light plots. You can turn the scenery all gray, so that you can still see where the scenery is, but the lighting instruments are the most prominent feature on the drawing. I am going to make this visible again. The seating, of course, will do the same thing. If I turn off the seating, it will go away. I'm going to make everything visible again. I say OK. Now what if I wanted to make things gray, but I did not want to be able to click on them? This is a common thing that you will do with your scenery, specifically if you're doing lighting plots. You won't want to click on that because you'll want to be putting a lighting instrument onto a lighting position, not onto a piece of scenery. This matters. So you'll want to go to View, Layer Options. And since we're currently active in scenery, the layer options are for whatever the active layer is. So currently it shows Snap Modify Others, so we can see all of the others. Let's see what happens to our stuff if we do Show Snap Others, but not Modify. So I could snap to this, but I can't actually really select it, okay? I could create a rectangle that hooks up with this corner of this thing, but I can't actually select it to do anything to it. What happens if I go to View, Layer Options, Show Others? Now I can't snap. I can only snap onto objects. I'm going to use my X. I can only select objects that are on the scenery layer. So that's only the things that have this heavier object line right now. Right? Everything else, I can't click on this. Can't click on that. Can't click on the seating cyan stuff. Alright, so what happens if I go to Layer Options, Gray Snap Others? So now, again, I can see this grayed out stuff and I can still snap it. So it's just like sort of turning it gray. It's about the same thing. There's a little bit of nuance to it, but it's about the same thing. What if I do View, Gray Others? I can't snap all these things. This is the one I use the most. I just gray things out and I can still see where they are, but I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on them or modifying them. And finally, there is a View, Layer Options, Active Only. And so you would get rid of anything that you're not currently working on. This one I use less often, but it can still be useful. And so I'm going to go to my View, Layer Options, Show Snap Modify Others. So this is the more common environment to be in. So you just have to go through and do what I did, make all the cyan things seating and make all the magenta things on the light plots, and play with each one of those things that I just showed you. The class options has exactly the same options. Where this becomes really useful is if you're doing a musical and you have multiple positions of scenery, making each location different classes is something that I've done before. I used to work on a Revolve theater set before, and using different classes, all the different colors that I showed you before, to show all of those locations simultaneously or from one into the other is how I used to use that.